November 18, 2024, the early hours in Bristol. A team from Avon and Somerset Police sweeps into a business park off Staunton Lane, Whitchurch. At the centre of it all, two heavy boxes, each filled with heroin, more than 10 kilograms in total, with a street value of nearly £1 million. And standing nearby, Justin Pearce, 45, of no fixed address, found in the same room as the drugs. It looked like a routine raid. But inside these walls, a network known as the Bristol Six had been operating, supplying Class A drugs at scale, right under the city's nose. The question: how did they build it? And what made it collapse? If you turn this off now, you'll never know how close this story came to your own city. Don't risk missing what comes next. Subscribe before it disappears. Justin Pearce was 45 years old at the time of his sentencing. A man listed as having no fixed address, his presence in Bristol's drug world came with few roots and little in the way of a stable reputation. The city of Bristol has many faces, among them the suburbs of Whitchurch, Caulfield, and Henbury. These are places where working-class families live, where jobs can be scarce, and where the promise of legitimate advancement is fragile. It is into this landscape that Pearce drifted, unmoored, leaning toward opportunity where he found it. In Whitchurch, Caulfield, and Henbury, the contrast between everyday life and underground profit was stark. More than once, Pearce moved among neighbors whose lives might have been modest, but whose streets became pipelines for something far more dangerous. He saw the chance, and he went after it. From anonymity to activity, his path crossed with others who would share in that rise. Joshua Batt, the muscle of the group, quick to move shipments and keep eyes on the street. Leah Murphy, trusted go-between, someone who could blend in, pass messages, or collect without drawing attention. Bourne, the fixer, the man with local connections who made storage and logistics possible. Glover, the quiet organizer, keeping roots steady and money moving. And Janet Chard, the one who helped keep things looking legitimate, her experience giving the operation a surface of normalcy. Together, these six names would become known as the Bristol Six. But at this moment, they were not yet labeled. They were people in the margins, they were neighbors, and they were passing in the night. Pearce may have looked like he would remain small time. But in truth, he would not stay small time for long. What happens next is how that shift occurred, and how it drew in the others. For Justin Pearce, the move into crime didn't happen overnight. He began with small, local deals, the kind of street-level trade that often goes unnoticed until it doesn't. But Pearce didn't stay at that level for long. He proved himself reliable, fearless, quick to move product, and evasive of scrutiny. In the drug world of Bristol's suburbs, word spread. Behind him, early contacts and mentors from the area offered opportunity. They showed him the routes. They introduced him to others. They trusted him because he delivered. He skirted close calls, raids in the background, police stopping cars, houses searched. He watched as others got caught. Yet for a time, he stayed one step ahead. And then came the moment the risk grew too big. His reputation and his ambition, they made him visible. Because serious eyes were already watching. Once Justin Pearce moved beyond street-level trades, the operation changed shape. This was no longer about single deals in alleyways, it became a business of bulk consignments. Public statements from Avon and Somerset Police make clear what investigators found: consignments of heroin and cocaine stored and moved through commercial premises around Bristol, enough to be described as worth millions of pounds. To scale like that requires more than one person. Alliances were formed, local couriers, drivers, and others who could move and hide stock, premises that could be used to store kilos out of sight, and people who could front the activity and keep ordinary commerce as a cover. The November raid at a business park in Whitchurch exposed exactly that model: drugs concealed in boxes inside a commercial unit. What police later set out in court was an organized pattern of supply and distribution, not isolated street dealing. Trust was the currency. Pearce earned it by being the kind of operator who delivered on time, who could coordinate handoffs, and who kept routes running. Where he lacked ties, others supplied them, people who knew loading bays, who knew which premises could hold a crate for a few days, and who could collect cash and move it without attracting immediate attention. Those practical roles, transport, storage, coordination, allowed the group to shift from local sales to wholesale supply. Risk and ruthlessness followed. When you handle high volumes, disputes over money and product are inevitable. Police accounts from the investigation make clear that offenders in this world operate under pressure, the constant need to protect shipments, to recover losses, and to settle accounts. That pressure creates both discipline and danger, and the group around Pearce learned to operate with a cold efficiency that kept the business moving, until it didn't. Encrypted calls and coded messages are how these networks protect themselves. Court records and police briefings later referenced intercepted communications and coordinated warrants that pieced those fragments together. Investigators traced movements, linked premises and people, and mapped the supply routes that supported the Bristol operation. At first, it seemed unstoppable: steady shipments, a working chain of supply, and cash coming in. But large empires leave traces, and the more they grew, the more visible they became. Most people will look away when the truth gets uncomfortable. You're not most people. Prove it. Subscribe now before this story hits too close to home. Everything seemed unstoppable, until a single betrayal began the undoing. At its height, Justin Pearce's network looked more like a coordinated business than a street operation. Public records from Avon and Somerset police confirm that officers uncovered over 10 kilograms of heroin inside a Whitchurch Business Park warehouse, a location that served as both a cover and a control point. From here, the group managed their movements: boxes in and out, cash collected, deliveries made on time. The logistics were tight, the network disciplined. Each drop-off was planned. Couriers would switch vehicles, change times, and use coded language. Surveillance footage later presented in court showed how methodical they had become: no corner exchanges, no visible transactions, just quiet handovers in car parks and storage units. Every movement was calculated to keep attention away from what was really happening inside those walls. Money moved fast. Investigators found evidence of large cash flows, of money counted, split, and sent through layers of accounts and holders. With it came the flash of a brief success: nights out, new cars, and the illusion of security that comes from feeling untouchable. But that illusion never lasts. Behind the scenes, small cracks were starting to show. Officers were watching the warehouse, mapping contacts, and monitoring patterns. Wiretaps and covert surveillance began to expose the group's rhythm: when shipments arrived, where they were stored, and who they trusted. Within the group, the strain was growing too: missed calls, unaccounted stock, and the unease that always comes when loyalty starts to shift. For Pearce, pressure built quietly. His name was moving up the list of targets. The same discipline that kept the network running was now the routine that gave investigators everything they needed. Every delivery, every meeting, and every message drew them closer. They were still counting money, still planning runs, still believing the system worked in their favor. But each move was now under a lens they couldn't see. And as the investigation deepened, one truth became clear: the higher they climbed, the further they had to fall. November 18, 2024. It began before dawn. Acting on gathered intelligence, officers from Avon and Somerset police moved in on a business park in Whitchurch, Bristol. They had spent months tracking movements, linking addresses, and monitoring calls. The moment had come to strike. When the doors were forced open, the scene inside confirmed everything investigators had suspected. 2 sealed boxes. Inside, over 10 kilograms of heroin, later valued at nearly £1 million on the street. In that warehouse, the so-called Bristol Six met the full force of a coordinated operation that had followed them in silence. The police account is clear: this was the decisive breakthrough. Surveillance teams had connected vehicles, traced contacts, and timed the warrant to perfection. What had seemed like an ordinary industrial unit was, in fact, the hub of a long-running drug supply line. Phones that once buzzed with orders suddenly fell silent. Messages went unanswered. Those who had been close to Pearce began to disappear, some arrested, others cutting ties, afraid to be the next name on the warrant. Whether someone inside spoke or whether a leak from surveillance reached its target was never made public, but one fact remained: the circle had closed. When officers found Justin Pearce, he was inside the warehouse. Handcuffed, silent, surrounded by the evidence that told his story better than words ever could. 10 kilos on the floor. Years of work reduced to a line item in an evidence log. For the officers, it was the end of a long pursuit. For Pearce and his partners, it was the moment everything stopped moving. The morning of the arrests ended months of covert work and brought every name in the Bristol network into the open. 6 people, Justin Pearce, Joshua Batt, Mark Bourne, Mark Glover, Leah Murphy, and Janet Chard, were each charged with conspiracy to supply Class A and Class B drugs. In court, the story that investigators had followed through surveillance and warrants was laid bare for the first time. The evidence table stretched the length of the courtroom, sealed exhibits, photographs of the Whitchurch warehouse, scales, packaging, and the 10 kilograms of heroin that had triggered the entire collapse. Justin Pearce, 45, the organizer and driving force. He coordinated the storage, controlled supply, and managed distribution across Bristol. The judge described him as central to the conspiracy. He received a 15-year custodial sentence, reflecting his leadership and control over the operation. Joshua Batt, trusted enforcer and courier. He handled movements of stock, oversaw transfers, and enforced discipline within the chain. He too faced a 12-year prison term, acknowledging his integral role in sustaining the network. Mark Bourne, the logistics link. He arranged storage and vehicle access. He was the man who made sure that the drugs and cash always had somewhere to move. His sentencing matched the seriousness of that coordination, 8 years and 8 months in custody for keeping the network alive behind the scenes. Mark Glover, the financial and operational steady hand. He ensured supply routes ran smoothly and money changed hands without a trace. The court ruled that he was deeply involved and received a long-term custodial sentence of 8 years and 8 months. Leah Murphy, the connector. She relayed messages, collected payments, and served as the face between handlers who preferred not to meet. The court accepted her lesser role but confirmed that her involvement was vital. She received a reduced prison term of 9 years and 7 months compared to her co-defendants. And Janet Chard, the facilitator. She participated in the organized group's activities, helping to provide a legitimate front, disguising movements that would later be exposed in the raid. Her sentence was 20 months, suspended for 2 years, the judge recognizing her limited influence within the hierarchy. When the final words were spoken, the collective total came to more than 40 years of imprisonment for the group. Families wept quietly at the back. Some defendants looked straight ahead, others couldn't raise their eyes at all. Outside, the headlines read what the police had already called them, the Bristol Six. With sentencing over, the Bristol Six became a case study in how quickly an organized network can rise, and how completely it can be dismantled. Officers confirmed that assets were seized, cash, vehicles, and property linked to the operation. Vacant stash houses were searched and cleared. Further investigations traced connections outward, aiming to cut off any surviving branches of the supply line. In Bristol's communities, Whitchurch, Horfield, and Henbury, the reaction was immediate. Streets that had grown used to quiet transactions fell silent for another reason. For some families, there was relief. For others, only shock that familiar faces had been part of it all. Parents told reporters about children asking why the police vans had stayed for so long and whether it was finally over. The warehouse now stands empty. Its metal shutters are locked, the once busy yard reclaimed by weeds. A strip of faded police tape still flutters on the fence, catching in the wind, the last remnant of a story that changed everything for those who watched it unfold. For the 6 who built the network, there are only years ahead to weigh what those choices cost. Was it worth it? Justin Pearce's network may have collapsed, but the market didn't vanish with it. For every warehouse emptied, another door opens somewhere else. For every courier arrested, another steps forward. In Bristol, in Manchester, in London, the demand still breathes life into the trade that Pearce once helped sustain. The fall of the Bristol Six was a victory for law enforcement, but it was also a reminder. You can dismantle an empire, seize the cash, and lock the doors, yet the chain continues. The question isn't whether it ends, it's who's next to take their place. If this case made you think twice, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell now. because the next story might already be unfolding, and you'll want to know before everyone else does.